I know that we're few here this morning, and I think we're going to see that kind of happen. Last week we had like 30 people, and this week, not quite as many, but we're thankful that we can meet together, and we're going to continue to follow guidelines for now. It looks like Indiana is going to maintain some of those for a while, and so we want to continue to do that together. But as we worship, to be mindful that as we gather with those who are joining us by live stream, that we are worshiping together, and that we're reminded that we are here to recognize that God has given us that opportunity to know that we are called to come and worship, that He has ordained praise, He has ordained worship because of who He is and who we are in Christ. The announcements and ministry opportunities are on the back of your bulletin, and they've been on the screens as well. That Wednesday night we will have our Bible study. I did introduce the idea of looking at maybe the opportunity of doing a Zoom or some kind of video type of Bible study, whether it's through Zoom or some other platform, but that would enable us to at least see in real time one another and to talk to one another and to have questions, and everyone can hear those interactions and we can talk about what that may look like, but and other things that we might want to do. I'm kind of to the place where I would not be opposed to going ahead and meeting up here and for Bible study. I just don't like you having to look at back of one another's heads and doing that way, and I would definitely be down among you, but we can talk about those things, and we would still do the live stream, and that would be the challenge of the live stream, of course, would be to show that engagement. Zoom would enable us to do that from each perspective. So anyway, those are just some thoughts. Thursday morning men's prayer, and let's continue to pray together. We need to do that, and if you would like to join us that morning, that would be awesome. Any other announcements, ministry opportunities that we need to mention? Before Marjorie plays the prelude, just to kind of go along with what we talked about last week and what we're going to look at this week. Psalm 78 is a psalm that encourages people to talk to one another about what God has done, who He is, and to continue that process. Because at the end of the video today, we're going to look at what happens when we don't do that, when we don't take responsibility of truth and pass that on so that the generations that follow not only understand the importance of truth, but are also passing that on, teaching and being aware of the value of that truth. And so Psalm 78 starts with the words, it says, "Give ear, O my people, to my teaching. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings from of old, things that we have heard and known, that our fathers have told us. We will not hide them from their children, but tell to the coming generation the glorious deeds of the Lord and His might and the wonders that He has done. He established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which He commanded our fathers to teach to their children, that the next generation might know them, the children yet unborn, and arise and tell them to their children, so that they should set their hope in God and not forget the works of God, but keep His commandments." Very important, and then it follows with a warning of what happens if they don't do that. And so as we continue to look at that this morning, just to be reminded of maybe reprioritizing the value of truth, not only in all aspects. There are no compartments there. That in every way we would value that truth. Marjorie, lead us as you play the prelude this morning. It's always interesting when the Israelites fell away from God, especially in the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible, then Joshua and Judges. It says when God would send someone to remind them of the call to faithfulness, He would always take them back and historically remind them of who He is. I delivered you from Egypt. I am the God of your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so in the same way, we want to reestablish the foundation. It is already there, and that is what we must acknowledge and then pass on and be committed to. Let's pray together. Father, we're thankful for this morning. We're thankful for this time that you give us to worship. And I just pray that you would continue to lead us, to open our eyes, to see again the value of truth in all of the arenas of life, but especially as we see it connected to you. That would become especially imperative for us to understand the nature of truth and the importance of not just living in it and portraying it, but then passing it on. So Lord, help us and lead us and guide us. And we're going to give you all the praise and all the glory. We sure do love you, and it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Stand with us if you would like. Let's worship together.
For I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. For I spoke a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. When I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. I found no worth, you paid it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. No shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. No wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. No shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. No wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. No shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. No wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Though it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Will I believe you when you say your hand will guide my every way? Will I receive the words you say every moment of every day? And I will walk by faith even when I cannot see. Well, because this broken road prepares your will for me. Well, help me to rid my endless fears. You've been so faithful for all my years. With the one breath you make me new. Your grace covers all I do. Yeah, 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 yeah. And I will walk by faith even when I cannot see. Well, because this broken road prepares your I'm broken, but I still see your face. Well, you've spoken, pouring your words of grace, and I will walk by faith, even when I cannot see. Well, because this broken road prepares your will for me, and I will walk by faith, even when I cannot see. Well, because this broken road prepares your will for me. Amen. You can be seated on the last song. You're staring at the ceiling, but the stars are out tonight. You're looking for some meaning, but you're afraid of the divine. Open your eyes to see through the walls of doubt. Open your heart to live beyond the shell that holds you down. Show me something glorious, show me something glorious. I'll show you the maker of it all. Show me something beautiful, show me something beautiful. I'll show you the one behind it all. Standing on the surface, you can't tell how deep it goes. Searching for a purpose to this life you've come to know. Open your eyes to see through the walls of fear. Open your heart to live beyond the shell that keeps you here. Show me something glorious, show me something glorious. I'll show you the maker of it all. Show me something beautiful, show me something beautiful. I'll show you the one behind it all. You ain't seen nothing yet. You ain't seen nothing yet. You ain't seen nothing yet. Open your eyes. You ain't seen nothing yet. You ain't seen nothing yet. You ain't seen nothing yet. Open your eyes. Show me something glorious, show me something glorious. I'll show you the maker of it all. Show me something beautiful, show me something beautiful. I'll show you the one behind it all. You're staring at the ceiling, but the stars are out tonight.
What a great song and reminder of just being connected to the one who has indeed shows us and reveals all that he is doing, and that we get to point to that. That is to be, in fact, the testimony of our lives, that show me something glorious, I'll show you the one who makes it all, something beautiful, the one that's behind it all. It's great reminders for us. Well, last week as we watched this video presentation from David Barton, and again I encourage you, you can look up David Barton like on YouTube, and he's got all kinds of stuff that is not necessarily available, at least not that I've seen, readily available on the Wall Builders search. So if you do a Wall Builder search, you'll see a lot of videos there. Some of them are shorter, but again, capturing the same message, that we need to be attentive to the things around us, and to be reminded of the history that has shaped us. I also looked up, surprisingly, maybe not so surprisingly, there are those that have a negative view of David Barton, because he does indeed talk about American exceptionalism, but he defined that for us last week, didn't he? It's a fact. We're exceptional in the way that the country has come about, what it does, what it has done, and the good, the bad, and the ugly. That the truth involves all of that. But it's not just the bad and the ugly. It's not just complying with these revisions and reworking of history. And so then as we went into that history and saw all of these wonderful characters and expressions of truth and courage and bravery and purpose, we were all kind of in awe of that it's there, and we didn't know any of it, and we'd not been told, and some of these were main events within our history. And so we left last week with where we will pick up this week, with that question, why don't we know? And part of what will happen in this video is the application of that why, carrying it forward into the current expression of our history and the things that people seem motivated to do as a result of what they don't know and what they think they know. And so that is a good bridge for us to see and how it applies, but then a very good reminder for us that as we look at and as we examine and evaluate and assess, we do that accurately. Because indeed it is our history that keeps us from repeating our mistakes. It is an accurate view of that history, and so it's important that we understand that. So, Allison, if you want to start that, we'll pick up for where we left off.
When you look at these black heroes, and some, I've told you some stories, but there's so many others. When you look at all these black heroes that are there, and the fact that we don't know anything about them today, the question becomes, why? How come we don't know this stuff? Here's the answer. This man was an educator, Woodrow Wilson. In 1902, he came out with a famous history book. It was called The History of the American People, 5 volumes, big old thick shit, 5 volumes. And he was an educator, and it was critically acclaimed as this fantastic education book he's come out with. And I can't believe how good this book is. And so the academics really liked it, really praised it. So much so that the next year, in 1903, president of Princeton University offered him the presidency of Princeton. He's the first clergyman to not be to become a president. He's the first non-clergyman to become president of Princeton. So he becomes the president of Princeton University. Within a very few years, they say, man, this guy's so good, he ought to be president of the United States. And so he gets elected president of the United States. He's shoved into notoriety by this 5-volume set, The History of the American People. Problem is, he is a hardcore racist. When he got into the presidency, in the federal government, all the blacks that were working in the federal government then, he fired every one of them except one, so he could have a token black. He also is the man responsible for the revival of the Klan, the second revival of the Klan, we call it. He brought that back. You see, the Klan sympathizers actually used his 5-volume set to write the script for the first Klan movie, which was The Birth of a Nation. This is a Klan recruiting film. Woodrow Wilson actually showed this film in the White House. First movie shown in the White House was by Woodrow Wilson, and it was a Klan recruiting film, and it was based on his 5-volume history of the American people. So the Klan becomes very favorable. They're at all the theaters where the movie is showing. They're the ones who saved America. Even in his administration would march openly with Klan down the streets of Washington, D.C., and the parades they had, Klan parades. So this is Woodrow Wilson. Now, interesting thing about Woodrow Wilson is when you look at this 5-volume set, and you've seen all the history I've shown you, and I've told you all the documents there, and so much more I can give you, he does not have a single black person anywhere in 5 volumes of history. He doesn't even have Frederick Douglass in there. Now, how can you be alive back at the end of the 1800s, early part of the 1900s, and not mention Frederick Douglass, who was photographed more often than Abraham Lincoln was? He doesn't do it. So, since he tells you of no blacks at all, maybe you don't know what a black looks like. So he does give you a picture of a black person, and it's a little bit on the disgusting side. That black person looks a whole lot like a monkey or a gorilla. Why would he do that? Real easy. It was his educational influence as he was growing up. You see, his education growing up, he was heavily influenced by a guy named Charles Darwin. He talks about that. He talks about the influence of Darwin, how we need to apply Darwin's evolutionary theories to so many aspects of life. We need to apply it to judiciary and politics. This is what progressives do. Progressives think we should be evolving in law and in politics and in government, that we should. It goes back to this. Now, if you don't know the title of Darwin's first book, 1859, it's called The Origin of Species, or at least that's all we say today. Look at the full title of the book. This is 1859, The Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or The Preservation of Favored Races and the Struggle for Life. Wait a minute, evolution was about favored races? Exactly, because the next book Darwin wrote was called The Descent of Man. In The Descent of Man, he has 11 occasions where Darwin says, well, the reason people have dark skins is they're not as fully evolved as white people are. So if we can send dark-skinned people back to Africa and let them stay there till their skin turns white, bring them back to America, then we'll have fully evolved people, which is why you get this kind of stupidity. Now, if you want to cancel something, let's cancel Darwin. I mean, that's a great thing to cancel. This is where so much of the seeds, so many seeds of so many bad things came out of this era, with progressives and Darwin and others getting together and combining their ideologies, political and educational and constitutional, et cetera. So all this is going on. So Woodrow Wilson is really kind of a turning point for so much of this. And it's significant that we clearly are historically illiterate about so many of the heroes of our own history. We just don't get presented them today. We have a Woodrow Wilson kind of view of history rather than the previous kind of view. And I have a number of history books in the 1800s, big old thick history books, nothing but the black heroes of the War of 1776, the black heroes of the War of 1812, the black heroes of the Civil War. We had lots of books with all the black heroes, and after Woodrow Wilson, try finding one of them. They're all gone because the academics have moved in a different direction. So having said that, we're not only historically literate about the heroes, we're even historically literate now about our own history. Because when you look back to America, we say, well, that's a bunch of racist, slave-owner bigots. No. Of the Founding Fathers, 3/4 of these guys were anti-slavery, freed slaves, worked abolition societies, started abolition movements. Now, 1/4 of them had wrong views on race, and so that's what we look at and say, that's bad. But 3/4 of them were just the opposite side, moving in an opposite direction, like some of the guys I've already shown you. That we don't hear about those three. We take the few that were slave or that were racist and say they were all like that. Well, not so. See, this is why the first region in the world to ban slavery were the northern colonies of America, who banned slavery by 1804. By 1804, every northern colony has abandoned slavery. There's not another region in the world that ended slavery before the northern colonies did so in 1804. We're the first part of the world to put a ban. That tells you something too. See, we have 5,800 years of recorded history. We've only been actively fighting slavery for 200 years? Yeah. 1804, well, actually before that, because the Quakers and others, the first load of slaves that came to America was in 1619 to Virginia, southern colony. The second load of slaves that came to America was in 1642 in Plymouth, Massachusetts. And The Pilgrims, when that load of slaves arrived, the Pilgrims freed all the slaves, imprisoned all the slave owners. They pointed to the verse in Exodus that says, you shall not have man-stealers among you, and that's what slavery and the slave trade was. So that's why in Massachusetts there never was a time when blacks could not vote. There never was a time when they couldn't hold. See, it's so different up north, but what we still get is the southern view. But you got to understand, that whole northern stuff, which started back in the 1600s, by the time you get to 1804, it had developed into we're not having slavery legally anywhere in this region at all. So that's a big step in the world history. The second thing to be aware of is, first, America is the first nation in the world to put a ban on the slave trade. That was in 1807. So we haven't ended slavery yet because the southern states are not doing that, but we've ended it up north, and now the whole nation has banned the slave trade. And then after we banned the slave trade, most people are unaware that we put a U.S. naval squadron, U.S. federal dollars, put a naval squadron off the coast of Africa to keep any other nation from being able to go in and take slaves. Now, they still got by us, but we stopped a whole lot of ships. As a matter of fact, that went from 1819 to 1861. This is one of the American ships, stopping ships that are trying to take slaves out of Africa. We tried to stop the slave trade, but Africa is such a big coast, our naval squadron couldn't stop all the ships. But we stopped a lot of them. The British joined with us, by the way. We had to pull the American squadron out in 1861 because we're involved in the Civil War. We need the Navy back home now to be able to fight the Confederacy. So we got the Civil War going. But the British, they had been our allies in this, and the British continued. This is actually a picture from 1903. Where the British is still intercepting slave ships coming out of Africa in 1903. These are slaves that were captured. They're taking them back to Africa to free them. So America, Great Britain, we're kind of world leaders in what we do. And then America became the fourth nation in the world to abolish slavery in 1865. Now again, there's 124 nations back then. We're number 4 in the world. That puts us up on the top elite of the world, and that's only 150 years ago. So this is not an ancient movement that America finally got on board with. Oh my gosh, America was helping lead the movement, and people understand that even today if they're outside of America. For example, if you look at where we are today, there's 193 nations today. I mentioned that. Did you know that today there are 94, we meet here this morning, there are 94 nations in the world today that still have not criminalized slavery. It's still legal to own slaves in 94 nations. There are 40 million active slaves in the world today. We have more people enslaved today than we had in the entire 4 centuries of the African slave trade. Africa today has 9.2 million slaves. I happen to help run an organization considered the most active anti-slavery organization in the world at this point in time. We've taken more than 100,000 out. When the caliphate, when ISIS came in 6 years ago and set up their territory in the Middle East, they went after, they made slaves of Christians and Yazidis. Anyone that was not Muslim made slaves. We actually have guys who go in physically and militarily fought ISIS to get slaves away. 2 of our guys were killed freeing slaves. One of them got shot 17 times. They keep going back in. Last week we had another rescue mission. We got 12 slaves out. So we're actively free. This is a deal that's going on right now. And most people are looking at what happened in America 200 years ago instead of what's happening right now. This should be a concern for everybody today. We got more slavery today than we've had in the history of the world. And again, America is one of the ones fighting this. As a matter of fact, when you look at the world chart, this is done by Australia and Great Britain and others, America is actually ranked as number 2 in the world in fighting slavery and racism. I mean, that should be something good about America. But see, what happens is we only get South Carolina, Georgia kind of view. We don't see the rest of what's happening. And this is really where we're historically literate, not only about our heroes, but even about world history and about American history with what's actually happened. So as a result of this, if you actually teach history the way it's supposed to be taught, you teach the good, the bad, the ugly. We're not teaching the good anymore. We're teaching the bad and the ugly. There's so many good things that happen that should be out there, and we should teach all of it. We should teach the good, the bad, the ugly. I mean, there's issues that America needs to deal with today that have got to be faced and addressed, but there's a whole lot that's out there because we don't know what's been done before. We have wrong images of so many things. So in saying that, let me just point you to what's happening now with our textbooks. This is AP U.S. History course that is taught in all 50 states. This is the final course you'll take in high school if you're really good in history. This is what gets you college credit. 460,000 students a year take this course. And typical of the way we teach today, when this gets to World War II, it doesn't talk about the 40 million lives that were lost in the European theater with Hitler and Mussolini. It doesn't talk about the 20 million lives that were lost in the Pacific theater with Tojo. It doesn't talk about any of that. As a matter of fact, when it came out, it did not even mention Hitler or the Holocaust, not even mentioned, which is why a month ago, President Trump passed a law called the Never Again Education Act that says schools have to start teaching about the Holocaust. You have to start teaching about the slaughter of the Jews. We're not teaching it, but what we did teach in World War II is it pointed out everything America did wrong. You literally go through this history course, and the only nation that did anything wrong in World War II was America. Time out. We ended tyranny in the world. We saved the world in World War II and in World War I, but you don't get that in history. This is what's called deconstruction. In deconstruction, we point out everything that's ever gone wrong, and we don't talk about the things that went right. And so this happens, this whole movement is dominating across education. You get the same thing with critical race theory. Instead of looking at what happened with all of race, we're only going to look at what happened in South Carolina and Georgia, and we're going to find some bad examples, and that's, no. There's a whole lot more that's gone right than has gone wrong. We still need to fix what's gone wrong, but we need to know all of it. And so critical race theory focuses on all the bad stuff. It's deconstructionism. Same thing happened back in the 1980s when Howard Zinn came out with his history book. His history book is everything that America's ever done wrong. That's what every kid needs to know. So today, kids can tell you more about what's wrong with America than what's right with America because we don't tell the kind of stories I was showing you. This is the deconstructionism. We even have now college professors. The myth of Americans, it's not a myth. The statistics I gave you are world statistics. That's not a myth. That's actual reality. No, it's all a myth. People believe America's special. She's not special. She needs to be destroyed so she can become special. And so what happens is you get the 1619 Project. 1619 Project started by the New York Times. BLM has joined that. Antifa has joined that. They're all together now on the 1619 Project. And it's interesting, the 1619 Project has curriculum being used in all 50 states. This is where the 1619 Project starts. The 1619 Project takes as a starting point that America was founded to protect and preserve slavery. Really? That's why we were founded? Ask the Pilgrims if that's what they did. Ask the Puritans. Ask the Quakers. Ask all the northern colonies if they were founded. They weren't founded. They did exactly the opposite. Now, if you want to talk about the southern colonies, that's fine. That's only about 15% of the population of America, maybe 25% in some instances, depending on what census you take. That's a smaller part of America. How about all the others? No, we take the assumption that all of America, all 13 colonies, were founded to protect and preserve slavery, and that the American constitutional system is the source of our society's ills, foremost among them is racism. Notice the sequence. If you want to fight racism, you have to fight America's constitutional system because that's what produced racism. So you need to get rid of that American constitutional system to get rid of racism because that's why America was founded. We were bad at the start. We've been bad all the way through. And so this is why, I mean, we look at founding fathers. They were the guys who gave us the documents. That's why we got to destroy everything that goes back to that. They were all racist, slave-owning bigots, not by a long shot. But if you'll notice the statues are coming down, they often have 1619 painted on them. This is a characteristic of what's happening is we've got to take down stuff, 1619. And by the way, let me also show you, I'm going to show you some statues in a moment, but you see here, this is a statue that was torn down of an abolitionist. But you see BLM on it right there? Notice the symbol above BLM. Do you recognize the hammer and sickle? That's the communist symbol. Look how often BLM paints the communist symbol beside what it does. Now, if you aren't aware, BLM changed its website about 3 weeks ago because they've lost 18% of public support over the last month and a half because they are openly Marxist and openly, well, they've got some issues that should be dealt with, but the whole organization itself as an organization has taken a Marxist position, which they themselves make abundant when they tear down stuff. And see, here's the other part of the story that goes with this. This has become more about hating America than it is hating racism. And the way I can demonstrate that to you is by taking you to what's happening now. We've been teaching this negativism in American schools for a long time. Jesus said that every student who is fully trained will be like his teacher. So we've been teaching how bad America is, and so now we're seeing it break out in ways that just surprise a lot of people. But this goes back to Hosea 8:7, where the Bible says, if you sow the wind, you're going to reap a tornado. We've been planting all these bad seeds, and we can't just figure out why it's blowing up into an explosive tornado right now, why it's become so violent. Well, the way we've been educating, and it goes, and so going to the statues, we're told the reason the statues are coming down is because they're fighting racism, and the statues that are being torn down are Confederate statues. Now, for this sake of this discussion, we're going to assume that if it's Confederate, it's racist. Now, that's not true, because there were a lot of Confederates in the South who hated racism, who were heavily persecuted for speaking out against racism and slavery, so not every Confederate's racist. But for this discussion, we're going to say if it's a Confederate statue, it's racist. Let's take it down. Okay, if we take that position, which the narrative doesn't fit what I'm telling you, but if we take that position, then tell me why in the world we took down the statue of David Farragut, who was a Union admiral who led the Union Navy to defeat the Confederate Navy and the slaveholding nation. So if you're going to say Confederates are slaveholding guys, tell me why you took down the Union admiral. Tell me why you took down the Union commander-in-chief, Ulysses S. Grant, who led the Union forces to defeat the Confederate forces, who became the President of the United States, who passed 6 civil rights laws, including the first law to punish the Ku Klux Klan, the first anti-Klan law. Why did you tear his statue down? And why did you tear down the statue of the Massachusetts 54th? The movie Glory 20 years ago, Denzel Washington. This is the breakthrough black unit in the Union. This is where equality was achieved in the military. I own the law that was passed by Congress. It says black soldiers, white soldiers, treated the same pay, same provisions. That's the breakthrough. Why did you take them down? And why did you take down Abraham Lincoln, the great emancipator? He's not a racist. Third statue of Lincoln went down Portland last week. They took Statue of Lincoln down as a bad guy. But why did you take Frederick Douglass down? If we're going after racist, this doesn't fit the narrative. Yeah, exactly. See, we're not only taking down the Confederate racist, we're taking down abolitionists and civil rights leaders. And then you throw in the fact that we keep hearing that Jesus is a white supremacist, and we got to get rid of. By the way, you are aware that Jesus was not white? Everybody aware of that? Jesus was not a white guy. And yet, look all across the nation, all the statues of Jesus now being beheaded. This is in Florida. This is in Miami. 2 weeks ago in El Paso, statue of Jesus beheaded there. We also get Christian missionaries all over the nation now. Junipero Serra founded California, brought education to Native Americans there, but both of his statues had to be taken down, defaced. The churches he started, the mission churches in California, we have to burn them down because they're this Christian missionary that we got to oppose. Then you've got what happened in Connecticut. There were churches vandalized, their satanic symbols painted all over. 11 churches over the course of weeks, happening all over the nation. I'm just showing you Connecticut. I can also show you what happened with St. John's Church in D.C., the Church of the Presidents. The first president to have a term in Washington, D.C. was John Adams. He went to church there. Every president of the United States has gone to Church of St. John's, burned it down. They tried to keep the police and firemen from putting out the fire. They got the fire eventually put out. BLM came in the next week to burn the church down again, started the church on fire for the second time. You have what's happening with taking 10 Commandments monuments down across the country. This one's in Montana. You have the burning of Bibles in Portland. What does this have to do with racism? I will point out that the guys who fought racism were the evangelical Christians of the day who led the abolition movement, who did so many things to change it, but we're taking down Christian stuff. And by the way, even in Denver, the Armenian Genocide Memorial, at the end of World War I, Muslims killed several million Christians in the Armenian Genocide. Mass executions, mass graves. One of the more famous photographs from the Armenian Genocide is how the Muslims would take young Christian girls and crucify them. And we're going to deface that memorial? What has this got to do with racism? So we're also going after Christ and Christianity. In addition to going after Christ and Christianity, explain to me why we went after the World War I memorial in Pittsburgh, or the World War I memorial in Kansas City, the World War I memorial in Birmingham, or why we went after the World War II memorial in Washington, D.C., the World War II memorial in Indiana, the World War II memorial in Merced, California, the World War II memorial in Charlotte. Apparently, we don't like the military either. We got to take the military out. And while we're at it, we got to take out every founding father. So we got to take out, in this case, Caesar Rodney from Delaware, who was an anti-slavery founding father who fought slavery, but he's a founding father. He's got to go. We've also got to take out Ben Franklin. Ben Franklin led the national abolition movement. We're taking him out. Yeah, he's a founding father. He has to go. We also have to take out Philip Schuyler, who helped win the first major victory in the American Revolution, the Battle of Saratoga, brought the French in to help us win the rest of the revolution. Maybe the only battle the French ever won. I don't know, but the French helped us win that one. So we got the French assistance there. We've got Casimir Pulaski. Casimir Pulaski was a Polish military officer who wanted to help America be free. He came here. George Washington made him a general here. He's one of the many foreign generals that we had fighting with us. He was anti-slavery, but we got to take his statue down. Theodore Thaddeus Kosciuszko. Thaddeus Kosciuszko, another Polish guy. He was a nobleman, very wealthy Polish guy. Came to America to help us fight for our freedom and independence. He was made a general as well. He took his considerable wealth out of Poland and used it to free slaves in the South. He hated slavery. He fought against slavery. He took that wealth and used it for that purpose. We got to tear his statue down. We have to tear down the statue of Louis XVI because he's the French king who supported the American Revolution. He aided the Founding Fathers, sent the French Navy and Army. Got to tear him down. We got to take down the tomb of the unknown soldier of the American Revolution, have to deface it as well. So apparently we don't like Founding Fathers either. We don't seem to like anything about America going on. And that's what you see reflected in the statues, is it really is about hating America. So bringing this thing to a close, what America has a dire need for right now is truth in history, that we tell the good and the bad and the ugly. That's what God did in the Bible. We get the story of David killing Goliath and David killing the lion and the bear, which is really good. We also get the story that David may be the lousiest father in the Bible. He never said no to his son Adonijah. His son Amnon raped his daughter. Absalom led a revolt against David. David was not a good parent, apparently, from looking at his children, the fruit they produced. And David's also the guy who said, I want Bathsheba, slept with her and killed the husband. You've got the good, the bad, and the ugly, and we can learn from all of it. We need all of it to learn from, not just the bad and the ugly. We've got the good. And see, that's what we know is David was a man after God's own heart. David repented. I mean, so many good things about the bad and the ugly, but we're supposed to teach all of that. What we need is actually, we need a heavy dose of truth. We need all the story, every bit of it, not just what one side wants or what the other side wants. And the reason this is so hard right now is when you look at America, we're polling-wise, 3 out of 5 Americans believe there's no absolute moral truth. I can decide well, you may think that, but I disagree with you. But what if what I think is true? Well, I still disagree. No, but we're at the point where that more than half of Americans think they can create their own truth. It's actually 4 out of 5 millennials, which is why you see millennials so involved in trying to turn things over. They've only been told one side. They don't know the rest of the story, and they have great passion, which is a terrific thing about millennials. If you can get millennials' truth, boy, does it turn them. In the summer times, we do 2-week sessions, training sessions for millennials, millennials and Gen Zers, 18 through 25, and I've never seen such a passionate generation turn so quickly when they get truth. I mean, it is so cool when they get to hold these Black history documents and see all the heroes and get the other side of what they don't hear. It's so cool. But see, even with Christians, it's 1 out of 2 Christians that think there's no absolute truth. So what we have a shortage of now is truth. So here's my closing challenge. We need to love the truth more than any time in our history, because we hear less of it right now, and we don't even know how to distinguish it anymore, which means you have to go find the truth. This is now proactive. You're going to have to go look up the stories I just told you about these great heroes and see if I was telling you the truth or not. How do you know whether I am? Just because I claim to own the documents doesn't mean I'm telling you the truth. Go look the stories up. You may be shocked to find out there's a whole lot more back there than what I told you. See, now we're going to have to put we've relied on the schools to teach us. We've relied on the textbooks to teach us. We've relied on the media to tell us. We've relied on our friends. Can't do that anymore. You're going to have to go find it on your own. Truth is no longer just sitting out there waiting to be picked off. You have to go dig for it because it's been buried. And then once you do that, you're going to have to defend it. We saw polling a month ago that 77% of Christians are afraid to share what they believe for fear of being attacked. You can't go silent just because you might get attacked. But you know, in Revelation,
But very, I don't know about you, but even as I watch that and I see stats and see the descriptions of what's going on, there were places where I don't know that I was uncomfortable, but it was disquieting to realize that we're watching all of this unfold in front of us. We're watching this revisionist approach to history. We now are seeing it become mainstream that they can indeed describe. And what he put there for the 1619 Project, that's what their words. Those are not his words. He put them in quotes. Those are their words describing what they're about and what they're doing, and their belief that the Constitution has to go. And to be a constitutionalist is a bad thing. To say that our Constitution it derives from something that is good, and also that we were founded to preserve and promote slavery. Those are their words. That's their starting point. So we've been reminded that, now it's on us. So what were the three things? We have to love the truth. We have to find the truth. We have to dig and make sure that, and that's part of our responsibility, and then defend. And the Bible tells us that always be ready. First it says, set apart Christ as Lord in your hearts and be ready to give an answer for the hope that's within you with gentleness and respect. And so as we've watched this, and I realize that some of those things that have been done, the media wants to also kind of present a portrayal of those actions in a way that will not come across as being negative. And so, when we talked about the movement of BLM a year ago, I went to their website, I read what it said. They made no apologies for being Marxist, socialists, wanting to dismantle the nuclear family. The organization was not right. It was not good. I could not stand with the organization. I can certainly stand with the truth that Black lives matter. All Black lives matter. There's no part of me that withdraws from that. But do we know the difference? Unfortunately, we weren't told the difference. One meant the other, right? And if you didn't stand with the organization, you were obviously not standing against the idea and made you either a racist or a bigot or whatever else you were identified as. And that's why we have to be careful. We have to go and find and then defend the truth. And so as we continue on that puts a lot of responsibility on us. So and that's what he said. He said, we've got the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's okay to tell the truth about what was bad and ugly, but don't make that the only truth that exists. Likewise, if we did that with the good and we weren't honest about the places where we have struggled and continue to struggle, that's not doing anyone any favors. We have to do both. We have to do all. And that becomes a standing imperative, meaning that it is ongoing. We have to do that every day and engage. How many of you knew about the current slavery trends in the world? We never hear that, right? Now, in part, it's because in countries where that happens, the media is controlled by those who are in control. It is truly a state-run media. And so it's not out there, it's not going to be seen. But when you realize that today there are 40 million slaves, and some of that slave trafficking is absolutely horrendous. And so we know of stories of places where that's included, including children and women as in the trade of sex or in sex trafficking, and that has been prevalent. That it is that it's nothing short of ugly, but we're not told about that. We're not told about this current battle that needs to continue. And we're also not told that we are the ones that were part of the first who said it cannot be. And if you want to see what our founders, those that stood against it, what they relied upon was indeed the Constitution that said that we're all created equal. And they want to go to a 3/5 statement that was in there about property. Go back and look that up as to why they put that in there. Because there was going to be zero by many, but they wanted to have some, and then eventually it was all. And it was only because of those who stood up and said it's wrong. And they stood in the face of those who said slavery was right, and they said, no, it is wrong. And they fought and died for that truth. So as we see all of that unfold, and as the power I marvel at the fact that Woodrow Wilson, who just 30 years after the Emancipation Proclamation held to such racist views and portrayed that, and it's true. You go back and look, and all of those histories are missing that we just learned about. It becomes very important for us. And let me just end with this. We're going to look at Judges, and I've got a few of these here. And so Judges shows up like the 7th book in your Bible. You get past Deuteronomy, the last of the Pentateuch, and then you have Joshua, and then Judges. Judges is such an interesting book. Some places it's just downright gruesome. As a youth pastor, I loved it because I could tell stories about the woman who drove a tent peg through the head of an escaping king. And she was proud of it. I mean, and when those that were chasing this guy, and he was a bad dude, she brings him in, and they find him, his head pinned to the ground with a tent peg. I don't know if anyone ever messed with her again. But anyway, or at least they didn't want to make her mad. But she knew what was at stake. But what has happened in Judges is that Joshua, and this is what we learn, is that Joshua, as they come into the promised land, it says that he dismisses the people. They're to go to the places that they've been given as an inheritance, their heritage. And so they went to each one to his own part of that land. You'll see the tribes. That's talking about the tribal division within Israel. But then it says that the people served the Lord all the days of Joshua and all the days of the elders who outlived Joshua, who had seen all the great work that the Lord had done for Israel. And so in the present, they were living with this reminder, but they were just simply saying, yes, we need to stay connected to this God, to the one who loves us and has made us and all of those things, but something wasn't happening. Something wasn't happening because they were not passing on that truth to the generations that followed. They created a shirt tail for them to jump on and to ride on. They created some kind of walk alongside me, but not anything to say, but this is why we walk where we do. Because the next verse says, and Joshua the son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110. They buried him within the boundaries of his inheritance in Timnath-Heres in the hill of country of Ephraim, north of the mountain of Gaash. And all that generation were gathered to their fathers. And there arose another generation after them who did not know Yahweh, did not know the Lord or the work that he had done for Israel. They didn't know. They were illiterate. And so because they didn't know, then they began to construct this idea of absolute truth. The generation that died, they were living within the constructs of absolute moral truth given by God, and it was reflected in their lives. They did not pass that on. And so the following generation, the people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord and served the Baals, the other gods in the countries around them. They abandoned the Lord, the God of their fathers, who had brought them out of the land of Egypt. Notice the history that even the writer of Judges includes. They went after other gods from among the gods of the peoples who were around them and bowed down to them, and they provoked the Lord to anger. To imagine that the Lord is slow to become angry, but they provoked him, and they didn't know, and they continued to do what was right in their own eyes. In fact, that becomes an indictment against them in the end of Judges. And so you have this pattern that develops within this book. God will send a judge to say, no, this is the way things are supposed to be. And he'll it says that they actually saved the nation of Israel. And six more times within the discussion of Judges, it will be said that they, as it did in verse 11, that the people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord throughout the book of Judges. Until you get down to the end, and this includes stories like of Deborah and Samson and Gideon and you have these stories interspersed, and it'll talk about, they'll even have 40 years or 80 years, and then it'll say that judge died, and then the people just did what was right what was evil in the sight of the Lord. So what's at stake here? What do we learn? So part of me just, I look at those judges and I see the impact that they had, but why didn't someone else pick up the mantle? Wasn't there a generation that followed that understood that this wasn't just a form of government? It wasn't just a form of doing something. It wasn't superficial. It wasn't just trendy, that it was to be steadfast and immovable and a part of what they do in every generation. We can't afford to do that anymore. And that's the point that David Barton was making. We can't afford to just simply leave this to chance. There was a time, I think, that we could assume that for the most part, there was an accurate history, but he showed you an AP course in history that did not include. How do you leave out the millions of people that are being slaughtered around the world by the hands of whatever form of government, and that as we step in, there is a reversal of that? And yes, it wasn't perfect, but the outcome was only there because of that willingness to step in and that not being included. And so that becomes important for us. And spiritually, it's the same thing. That's why the Bible reinforces this over and over again. To speak and to train up a child in the way they should go in Proverbs. In Ephesians, to raise them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. To know that that's what's at stake, that we cannot take that for granted. We must not leave it for someone or something else, that we have that responsibility. And there are no guarantees even with that, but that is our current responsibility. Because it may not be a guarantee, but I can guarantee you one thing: if you don't do it, we will see a continued growth of chaos and the mess that we see now. And it is sad. It is in some ways frightening to think that 80% of millennials do not believe that there's absolute truth. 50% of Christians don't believe that there's absolute truth. And in total, you have the 60% of people in general. That's come from somewhere. I hope you've been challenged by this and encouraged as well, because it is out there. We can indeed know and let that knowledge then shape us and to shape our understanding of things. And so as we seek to live this out, that we are doing that with a love for the truth, that we find the truth, and then that we defend it, and that we understand how important it is. And so while the accusation of Christian nationalist, or this idea that America is not exceptional, don't make that your opinion. Make it a statement of fact. Go back to the beginning section of this and look at all of the things that are a part of who we are. That the claim of exceptionalism is only there because the statistics say so. It's not because we are trying to be or declare it to be so. And so when you have those discussions, let that truth become a part of that discussion. It's not wrong to say that America is exceptional. It's not wrong to say that there was a Christian underpinning to that foundation and to the Constitution and to the things that they did and said. It's not wrong when you look at Benjamin Franklin, who's not known for the best choices in his personal life, that when they were trying to come to the Constitution and they were day after day for months are fighting and not getting anywhere, that he says, when did we stop praying every day for the guidance of our God? those things are just real. That's what we see before us, and we don't have to run away from those things. And what did that mean then? From their perspective and then from ours. What did it mean for them to apply these principles and to see that indeed these inalienable rights, God-given rights, motivated and pushed them to come up with the things that they did? And we need to allow it to continue to push us in just that way. So, any statements or questions? I kind of wanted to do that. And I don't know if, Trey, you want to try to capture this on Livestream or not, because it won't be mic'd or anything. But did you have any comments or questions as you watched this? And how did it make you feel? What did it stir anything within you? Okay. Yeah, there is some of that, absolutely. And I think it was the idea that it seems like we're so far gone, we're so far into this, that is there a way that we can, and some have said no. I mean, I'll be honest, I've read many who have said we're just too far. This is, we just have to take where we are and make one stride at a time, one step at a time where we are. We can't change the whole thing, but we can change what that looks like in our neck of the woods, in our sphere of influence. And so that becomes very important.
I think we have to stand up, though, and believe what we truly know is right, and not back down from it.
Yeah. And so,
because if you don't, they're just going to continue to keep on pushing and pushing, and their main goal is even more than that, to destroy Christianity, destroy the Bible.
So Chris said that there was some shock and some disappointment, dismay with all that she saw. Dave responded with that we need to be ready to stand up for what we believe and what we know is true. And that's why it's so important that we know how to have an informed conversation about what we believe. Because he's right, the millennials, while 80% of them don't believe in absolute truth, when you give them truth, they're very passionate. And I told you the story about filling in teaching for Dan Morell's class at Ivy Tech, and we were philosophy and religious studies, and talking about absolute truth, and talking about how that works, and they could agree that certain things were absolute, but then you could see them. It just, their system did not allow them to embrace that, and they would start backing away from the idea that something was absolute. And in that case, it was about, the idea of violating a woman, and then the ensuing repercussions and consequences of that. And they started pulling back and saying, well, maybe culturally they have a different outlook. No, is it always wrong to do that? Is it always wrong? And you would hear them say yes, and then try to qualify it from a different angle. So we know that that's the truth, but when you give them that, they become very passionate about it. They are willing to embrace that, and that's important for us, and why we must know the information that shapes our faith. Jerry.
I think in school that I sense pride in where we came from, what we developed our country into, and there was this, I always loved history for that part, but at some point in the last 40 years, it's changed that whole narrative that
You should, and almost made to feel like you shouldn't be proud. So when you heard the history that he gave, did that pride come back? Did it yeah. Right. So, and that's one of the important things that this idea that there's this attempt to generate that outcome that they want. They want you to not be proud. They want you to think that, America's not exceptional. And he said in there, he's very, very upfront about it, that it is about hating America for whatever reason. And that's the part that we may not know, and it may be multifaceted, and it may come from a lot of different angles, but that seems to be the end result, that they want that general thing. And but that is an affront to what we know. When we look at those things, we're not proud from this perspective of just, being American. We're proud because of what they've done, what it has taken, and like he said, just look at our surviving Constitution. Look at the construct of the government and how they went about it, and what that has meant throughout our history. And so we have reasons to be proud, and certainly when you have foundational reasons, it's also why you can look at the bad and the ugly, and you don't have to hide from them. It's the pride that is rightly grounded in truth that leads you to say that is bad, that is ugly, and it should not be. That is also a statement of pride. To own your stuff and to take responsibility for it is also a statement of pride. Not of arrogance, but of pride. And that has to be the difference we draw. What does it mean to be proud of what that has meant versus just being arrogant without any cause? Chris.
Another thing that stood out to me was the repercussions from the Darwinism filtering down from Woodrow Wilson. Had no idea. Kind of explains an experience I had with my son, but it makes me also want to zoom out. Like there's so many people I come in contact with that their kids have made choices. We fear what we're seeing these youngsters do, but we also are a generation of feeling. If we can zoom out and see this big picture of the truth, how we've fallen away, and the atmosphere that we've all been living in, it kind of gives you a different starting point to attack.
Well, and that's the irony, is that those that have kind of revised and just want us to focus on the bad and the ugly, they have certain people that they hold up and put on a pinnacle within their construct. They will not bring out the bad and the ugly as well. The subtitle of Charles Darwin's book, Origin of Species, is never included in that title. And it's on there. It's actually what he put. It's his subtitle of that book. And so it's the same thing, and you encounter this through discussions with Planned Parenthood, and Margaret Sanger being, she was driven by Darwinian mindset and she hated minorities. She wanted them eradicated. And so that was part of the abortion mindset back in the early 1900s with her. Yeah, but that's the story that won't be told in elevating the organization and what they claim to stand for. That those are the parts that are left off. And so yes, we have to step back and say, okay, what's the whole picture here?
It gives me that mindset to step away from my small little parenting interaction with my kids and blow it up even bigger, and I approach it different, so it's not a feeling of, I feel bad because I'm a bad parent, and it gives me a different approach for my kids.
Yeah. It does. It shapes it gives you a different filter and perspective. Keith.
Back in the 50s or 60s, Khrushchev said that they were going to bury America, and that communism was going to take over the country. And they are very much, they've taken over. People with the socialist mindset are teaching in the high school, in the schools, in the colleges, universities, and they have a major presence. What's going on out there, it's not Black Lives Matter. The black race has improved dramatically. You got head football coaches, you got lawyers, you got black presidents, vice presidents. Their condition has improved drastically. Now in the inner city it's bad, if you live there, but that's true for older white people, and for white people as well as for black people. But what's really going on out there is a takeover underway take over the United States using socialism, making it sound like something good. And that will fulfill, socialism is the next step beyond communism. And Khrushchev's statement still is a problem out there because they have made great strides. And all of this uproar and the tearing down of history and all of that is related to the taking over of the country that Khrushchev talked about.
Interestingly, I saw an interview with a defecting Russian intelligence officer, and it was in 1984, and he outlined that exactly. And he told us, he was telling them then, he said, America better wake up because we have infiltrated your schools, we have infiltrated your political systems, and you are hearing what we want you to hear. And it was that very idea. And so now you have a whole generation. I would be interested to see how many of the millennials think that socialism is a viable form and a good form of government. Never has worked, never will work. It's always, and is behind, in the 20th century, there are more massacres, millions of people at the hands and at the altar of socialism than all other mindsets combined. Whether it's Stalin, Cambodia with Pol Pot, Hitler, you start adding those up, and everything else pales in comparison. And so, yeah, it's definitely there. Yes.
With a follow-up with that, it reminds me of, it's very refreshing to get a perspective of someone that has come from,
Oh, absolutely.
come into our country, and they can see all this.
Yeah, and they're saying, don't go there, don't go there. Yeah.
And they appreciate
Whether it's Cuba, Venezuela, Eastern European countries, they say the same thing. Well, let's just start with ourselves. And this song calls us to that response, that I surrender all. So let's let our pursuit be a reflection of that mindset that we have, that we first are His, and then I would hope and pray that regardless of what country we would be in or what circumstances, that this would be our truth, that we are His and forever His. Let's stand together in worship. All to Jesus I surrender, all to Him I freely give. I will ever love and trust Him, in His presence daily live. I surrender. Let's just go ahead and sing our other two songs. And feel free to remain standing if you like, and then we will pray at the end. I love you, Lord, and open my eyes that I may see. We'll do two verses of the last one, Allison, first and last.